My name is Matthew Hinneman, and this is episode 104, Game of Thrones miniseries 4. What can House Lannister teach us about security spending? So, House Lannister. Man, how to sum these guys up? Well, I think there's a quote from the show that kind of just summarizes it perfectly. And this is, you have to give it to the Lannisters. They may be the most pompous, ponderous cunts that God ever produced to walk the world, but they do have outrageous amounts of money. And that really just kind of sums up their entirety of House. Another thing that kind of sums them up is there is a well-known song inside of the books. It's called The Rains of Castamere, and it's about how a house rebelled against the House Lannister, and House Lannister just completely wiped them the fuck out. And it's a common song that all of House Lannister knows and appreciates and sings about. And it's really kind of telling that the one song that they have, or one of the most popular song that's about them, is about how just absolutely terrible they are to a rebellious house and how they destroyed another house. So yeah, that's kind of them in general. I mean, to put it another way, inside of the show Game of Thrones and the books, Song of Fire and Ice and Fire, or I forget the order of which one it is. Anyway, the whole house inside of that show is just really fucking terrible. So the two primary characters that you're introduced to initially are Cersei and Jaime Lannister. Cersei is queen, married to Robert Baratheon, and Jaime Lannister is one of the King's Guard, who cannot take any family, who's not supposed to be married, not supposed to have kids, so that none of his loyalties are divided as he protects the kings. Well, in the show, he and Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister are in an incestuous relationship. They are fucking, which is a really weird thing for George R.R. Martin to really kind of focus on. But yeah, it's a whole thing. It leads to a bunch of problems. We find out that all of the king's children, quote unquote, are actually the love children of Cersei and Jaime. So there is no true Baratheon heir, which leads to the entirety of the whole fucking series. So there's that. To kind of spell it out even further, Tywin Lannister is the most terrible father ever. Does not give a shit about any of his children. Does not give a shit about anything but making money and attempting to spend his way out of problems. It is kind of telling that the most relatable character in the Lannisters is probably Tyrion, who is terrible in his own right. I mean, he's a dwarf who drinks and whores a bunch, which, gotta say, at least he's not fucking his sister. So there's that. So beyond that, the Lannisters just kind of expect to spend their way out of problems. And this is a problem because it gets them into trouble throughout the entire show because they think they can spend their way out of an issue. Somebody can't be purchased. That leads to an issue further down the line. And so they attempt to spend more money, which raises another problem. They get themselves into debt, and they essentially have to kill more and engage in more war in order to try to gain enough money to keep their house solvent. And because they back the throne, that means if the Lannisters go under, the entire kingdom goes under, and that's a bad thing. So the show and the books kind of spell this out in really great detail, which is kind of why I focus on them for this. Now, the whole aspect of House Lannister is that they are all just kind of evil bastards. So luckily we don't really have to focus on that. But, having too much money really is kind of a nice problem for most people. Not having to worry about money can be great, but it can lead to a lot of problems if you're not careful. And specifically with security spending and IT spending in general, it can be a significant problem. And so that's basically what we're going to focus on with this episode. Is we're going to look at those problems that's going to create. And so inside of this issue, I've worked for an organization that has had a blank check for IT, for their IT budget, which is fucking fantastic in a lot of ways, because you get exactly what you need. You never have to worry about what does this cost. You never have to worry about, hey, we need replacement parts. We got to try to find a solution, or we got to try to find the cheapest option available. It's never a problem in that kind of organization. And there are some primary problems that do show up because of this. And sort of the 5 that we're going to focus on in this episode are lack of adoption, too many solutions, not enough expertise, vendor paralysis, and ambiguity of responsibility. And so, first off, lack of adoption. So what I mean by this is when you have the ability to purchase any solution or any product, the problem is that you then over purchase a solution. You buy too many different solutions. One of my clients that I've worked with in the past, they buy a solution and they may only use one aspect of that solution. And so then what that means is that they purchased this vulnerability scanner, which is also a compliance engine, which is also a SIM, and can perform a bunch of other operations and things like that. It can do XDR, it can do DLP, but they only really wanted it for that compliance engine piece. And so that's all they use it for. And then they also have and purchased a separate SIM. And then they also purchased a separate XDR solution. And all of these other solutions have bigger and better pieces that they can add. But they are overspending on all of this. And there's there's too much functionality there. And there's just so much that all of these things do. And a lot of their functionality and features overlap that they've now spent 3 times the amount of money just to get a single use case out of each one. And this is a problem. Lack of adoption means that you have 3 fucking agents that you're installing on every machine, as opposed to installing a single agent and running that solution. So that is a huge problem, because your lack of adoption and integration into these systems means that you're losing a lot of a feature set. You're losing a lot of the actual use of the product, but also with that lack of adoption of the features, it can really seem like you're just not spending any money. It's not doing anything. And so when you're like, well, we were promised that it would do all of this, and you didn't actually spend the time to adopt it fully, means that you can run into an issue where it's like, well, let's just get rid of it. It's like, well, we actually do need this one piece. This one piece is extremely vital. But if you're not prepared with your other solutions to make that, to incorporate that better, then you could lose a bunch of shit that you think is going on. And this isn't just a problem with organizations that spend more. This can happen in any organization, but it tends to happen more frequently when you just go out and buy solution after solution or product after product, and you never fully adopt it into your stack. It can be a whole entire fucking issue when you're forced to focus on 16 different solutions that all do one specific thing. So, if you get into a circumstance where you have an ungodly amount of budget, you should focus on fully adopting and fully integrating a specific product into your stack, and not just like, yeah, this is it. It does this one thing, and that's all it does, because that can be a problem. Another issue, and this kind of tails onto it, is that there are too many solutions. again, when you have the ability to buy solutions, then you look for solutions for the stupidest fucking things. You know, another organization that I had a solution that would update all of their workstations for them, which seems really fucking redundant, right? Like, you have Windows does that itself now. It does that. You don't have to have a separate fucking client just to update your system. But no, they wanted one solution to update their system. And the problem is that now somebody has to manage that solution. And if you spend too much into that, it can it can lead into where your IT folk or your security folk are only managing solutions. They're actually doing their fucking job because they're too busy managing all of these disparate solutions, and that's an issue. The other problem is that people organizations tend to not want to spend money on salaries, which is fucking weird. But they don't like to spend money on salaries. So what they'll do is they'll spend money on solutions to avoid spending money on salaries because, hey, I can save $20,000 if I buy the solution instead of hiring somebody for that extra $20,000, which to me seems kind of backwards. You would want to have somebody more than you would want to have a solution. You want to have a person who you can hold responsible rather than buy a solution. And again, part of the whole fucking issue here is that if you have too many solutions and you have too many things to manage, you can actually really fuck over your current workforce. You can really screw over the entire department and the people who are working there because now they're not doing the job. They're managing a solution. They're not focused on fixing a problem. They're not focused on resolving issues on the actual systems. They're constantly having to fuck with and fight with a solution that is single purpose. And that can lead to further problems down the road. And that leads us into not enough expertise. Because when you buy too many solutions, you're not focused on one of them. You're not getting really great at the ones that you have. You're constantly have to fucking jump around and get into these different solutions. And that's a problem. Because, if you over purchase solutions and you don't have enough people working in your IT department or security department or whatever, then you don't have enough people to sit there and focus on those solutions to then fully understand what's going on. Because again, they're having to focus on so many different things, and you end up having to rely on the expertise of the vendor for that solution, which can be a problem in and of itself. So if you are operating in an environment where you just purchase a solution and you expect it to do a thing, and it either has an issue or it causes issues with other solutions or with other applications or with whatever, then you're constantly having to fight that and not learn about what the product does, how it does it, and how you as the administrator can make that solution better within your environment. You don't get that. And that is a huge problem because then you're not getting the full value of whatever you're spending. And then you have to spend more money on different solutions just to get the full feature set that you were promised with another one. And so vendor paralysis is another problem that can occur with all of this. Because oftentimes when an organization decides that they're going to spend their way out of a problem, what happens is you are constantly worried or having to march at the vendor's cadence, because the vendor is who's really supporting and operating that solution. And that is a problem because now the vendor is completely divorced from your priorities. In Game of Thrones, House Lannister has to hire a bunch of different armies. They have to pay a bunch of different armies to help protect them. In fact, one of the people that they pay to protect them is House Greyjoy. And that ends up fucking them over in the long run, because there's a sacking of King's Landing by House Greyjoy, even though they paid them, which is a whole fucking problem. And not to say that a vendor is going to, rob you, but it could happen. You don't know who a vendor hires. You can't vet a vendor's direct hires. You have to trust that their customer service and that their engineers are doing the right thing. But also, if you're having to wait on a vendor, then you have to wait for your shit to come up on priority. And you never know when a vendor is not going to be able to support you in the time frame that you need, that you require. And so that is why you should never rely as a primary point of support your vendors. That's why you have an IT team, is because they need to support the product. They need to support the solution. And the vendor is only to help support them. So your IT team is supposed to be that first response, that first layer. They are supposed to be the ones who understand the product. And if you have too many solutions, or you're not allowing them the ability to focus on the solutions that they have, that can be a problem where you really get fucked over when there's an emergency or a problem with that very specific product. And while there's not really a good way around this, a primary example of this is CrowdStrike. When CrowdStrike fucked over the entire world because they pushed a bad update and it brought everybody down to their knees, there were several organizations that were down for weeks. And we'll focus on Delta as a primary source, because Delta had too many fucking solutions. They couldn't resolve their problem in a reasonable amount of time, where organizations, and mine specifically, my organization, we were up within 4 hours of CrowdStrike bringing us down. We were back up within 4 hours without issue. Our clients never knew that there was even a problem, that they were affected by it. They just thought everything worked well. When we told them, hey, sorry about that CrowdStrike issue, we had it resolved, they were like, what problem? We never even noticed, which was fucking fantastic. But Delta didn't have that capability because they had purchased too many solutions, because they had all their shit in Azure and Amazon and Google, and they couldn't get into it because they didn't have people who were expert enough in the solutions to fix the fucking problem when it came up. They could have been out of their issue within 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours. Instead, it took them 2 fucking weeks to get back to normal operations because of this problem, and they sued the shit out of CrowdStrike. That suit is getting thrown out. There's no fucking way that it's CrowdStrike's fault that they were down for 2 fucking weeks. It's all Delta. But it's a primary example of how vendor paralysis can really lead you into an issue where you're relying on the vendor to fix shit for you, or you're relying on your vendors to fix shit for you instead of being able to do it yourself and get your results in a proper amount of time. So one of the last things that we're going to focus on is ambiguity of responsibility. And this ties in with vendor paralysis, because one of the things that can be a significant issue with having too many solutions is that you're not entirely sure who to go to first. Which solution do I need to go to resolve this problem? And this leads itself to a bunch of issues by itself, but is really more of a function of, when there's a problem, what do I do? And what I mean by the other aspects of this is that if there's an issue, who caused it? Like, who's responsible for this one fucking problem? And I have a perfect example for this. When I was working in the organization that just had an ungodly amount of money, we purchased a solution for hyperconvergence, which, to summarize, we basically had a single stack of servers that we installed all of our virtual machines on, and these servers were clean and crisp. And the solution that we purchased was basically something that allowed us to be able to restore servers second by second. So if there was ever an issue or an incident, we could literally go back to any second in the last day, in the last 24 hours, and restore a server at that point in time, which is really cool. It's a really fun feature to have. And, restoration of a server, of a full server from broken state to a full state was, like 5 milliseconds. It had zero lag time or anything like that. It was a fantastic fucking solution. But it was all built on top of VMware. And so VMware ESXi. And so when an issue occurred on those servers, let's say, for instance, VM host died or the entire cluster failed, we didn't know who to fucking contact, because do we contact VMware? Because, VMware is the host. They support the host. We have licenses. We have support contract with VMware. Do we contact them? Do we contact HP because they're the ones who made the product? Do we contact the enterprise support team for the product itself? Who the fuck do we talk to? The ambiguity of responsibility means that we end up submitting a ticket 3 different fucking ways, and basically waiting on whichever one responds first to see if we can get it resolved. And then you waste time, hours and hours, with a support person for one organization to find out it's actually this person's responsibility, and that can lead to delays in recovery. And so that's a significant issue for a number of reasons, not just the fact that now your time to return to operation is fucked, but it also prevents you from being able to fully adopt and understand how your support is structured. Whereas, if you don't have this level of support, of product engagement, I guess, I don't know, if you don't have this number of products, you don't have these problems. If you have somebody or something that can set up the hyperconverged for you in a different way, where it's not reliant on vendor support to resolve the problem, then that can lead itself to where you are now able to respond quickly to problems and make sure that you've fixed whatever issues you have without having to call a fucking vendor. And, the House Lannister had issues like this in the books and the stories, where they would try to spend their way out of a problem, and the ambiguous issue would be that, well, where do we get this money from? Who's going to cover this? Is it going to be the Lannisters? Is it going to be the Iron Bank? Is it going to be the throne? Who's going to spend this money? On top of that, they don't know who they've paid out. They don't know who they've given money to, because they've given so much money to different places. And this comes into play with, like, they end up paying anyway, with House Lannister and overspending, you're going to run into an issue where if you have too much of a spend inside of your IT department or your security department specifically, it can become unwieldy. You've now built this organization, you've now built this reputation, and now you have to try to figure out how to support this overweighted department, and it just will snowball. So ultimately, as an organization, the better way to go through this is to probably focus on single solutions that cover a wide variety of solutions or a wide variety of problems that solve more than one issue, that have a direct line of support, and give your IT team the opportunity to become an expert in the solution before you then adopt another one. And always right size your purchase. Always right size what you're buying. Don't overpay. Don't pay for too many more. Don't pay for too many licenses, and always know what you're getting. I know I talk shit about Microsoft, and this is another fucking rant, but they don't fully tell you what their licenses cover inside of Microsoft 365 because they kind of are trusting for you to buy more licenses than you need or duplicate feature sets across their licenses because that's how they fucking make money, and it's awful. So anyway, in the end, purchase your shit, or else, you're going to have another house poison your kid at his wedding, and then nobody's going to be sad today. Man, that didn't transition. Anyway, hope y'all have a great day.